Hello. All right. A very warm welcome to all of you. We are going to be live in a minute. And audience is just trickling in now. So, anytime we give them 4 o'clock. So, maybe one more minute and we'll start. You can hear me, right, sir? All of you can hear me?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Very well.
yeah,
Very
All
well.
right.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Greetings to all of you. Good afternoon. A very warm welcome. Excellencies, distinguished panelists, friends from India and all over the world, ladies and gentlemen, it's my delight and privilege to welcome you all today to today's virtual panel discussion entitled India in SCO Geopolitical Shifts, the Next Steps. The webinar, as you know, is being organized in the run up to the SCO summit in Samarkand. We are extremely fortunate to have such a stellar cast of speakers who have between them decades of experience with the region, in dealing with the region in various roles. Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar, India's former ambassador to Kazakhstan and Sweden, who knows the region very well. Ambassador Skand Tayal, India's former ambassador to Uzbekistan and South Korea. India's Mr. Pankaj Saran, India's former ambassador to Russia and Deputy National Security Advisor. Professor Srikant Kondapalli, who is yet to join in, but he'll join shortly. And Dr. Leela Della Buraba, lecturer Al Farabi, Kazakh National University. And we are also extremely fortunate that we will have India's ambassador to Uzbekistan, Manish Prabhat, who will also join us in some time. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this very interesting discussion, what promises to be a very interesting discussion. Allow me to say a little about myself and my organization. My name is Manish Chand. I am founder and CEO of India Rights Network and Center for Global India Insights, a think tank cum strategic advisory that focuses on geopolitics and actionable foreign policy analysis. We also publish India and the World, a foreign policy magazine journal that has carved a niche among the diplomatic and strategic community in India and abroad. For all our organization, for more on our organization and activities, you can find it on our website www.indiarights.org. In the last few years, ladies and gentlemen, we have organized several seminars, physical as well as virtual, on different regions and themes. These panel discussions have been marked by the participation of eminent speakers and high quality of discussions. We hope that our webinar today on the SCO and geopolitical shifts in the larger Eurasian region will live up to our reputation and raise the bar for informed discussion on foreign policy issues. Dear friends, let me just lay out the context of today's discussion. We are meeting at a conflicted time when the international geopolitical landscape is deeply polarized, with competitive alignments emerging to promote their own interests. Three seminal developments have further complicated the fault lines and challenged the international community to think on its feet and come out with innovative solutions. First, the brutal coronavirus pandemic, which has killed millions across geographies and radically altered the world as we knew it. The pandemic also underlined the imperative for enhancing transnational cooperation in forums such as BRICS and SCO. Secondly, the Russian military operation in Ukraine, which has put renewed spotlight on issues relating to national sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the rules based international order. Third, the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan in August 2021 and the formation of the Taliban government in that country has affected the region in more ways than one. The three events have badly affected Central Asia, and the larger Eurasian region, and form the backdrop of the SCO summit in Samarkand. The SCO summit in the historic city of Samarkand on September 15-16 is probably one of the largest gatherings of leaders in the region. This will be the first summit to be held in person after a gap of 2 years of the pandemic. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Russian President Vladimir Putin, Chinese President Xi Jinping, along with the leaders of Central Asian countries, will participate in the summit. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi and Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif will also be in Samarkand for SCO summit. Besides, the summit will be attended by a lot of leaders of observer states, including that of Turkey, Turkmenistan, and other leaders. So this is a really a big gathering, much bigger than the normal gathering we have in the SCO. And as you know, the strategically located and resource-rich Central Asia has emerged as an arena of competition and rivalry among leading powers of the region. Russia and China have declared that the friendship has no limits, but this declaration hides undercurrents of rivalry, according to some. Inclusion of India, the world's largest democracy in the SCO, has imparted a new dimension to the Central Asia focus grouping. So given this backdrop and attendance of leaders of major countries in the region, the SCO summit in Samarkand will be watched closely, not only in the region, but across the world. Now, let me briefly unpack key themes of the webinar. First of all, the virtual panel discussion will seek to unpack the importance of SCO for India, an emerging global player and the world's fifth largest economy. That's why the webinar is titled India in SCO, Understanding India's Role and Potential to Shape the Geopolitical and Geo-Economic Landscape is crucially important as India takes over the presidency of SCO from Uzbekistan and gears up to host the next summit. This is an important debate as some important voices in the strategic community have off and on expressed skepticism about India's membership of SCO. Related to India's role in SCO is the question of SCO in relation to other plurilateral and multilateral organizations of which India is a part. In this context, it's important to clarify how India's engagement in SCO fits in with its membership of other organizations such as Quad. We have eminent diplomats and experts to illuminate India's role and how India can play a bigger role in the region. The other important theme of the discussion today is about geopolitical shifts and power play and how India can play a bigger role in the region. These power shifts have become accentuated in the wake of the Ukraine crisis. Within SCO, mini coalitions are emerging. For example, Russia-China no-limit friendship, China-Pakistan all-weather friendship, and combinations and permutations around that. Induction of Iran as a full member of SCO further
I think Manish is off the line.
technical snag.
That's what it appears.
I'm really sorry about this.
Again.
Yeah, but now I'm glad that we are back on this.
Yeah.
So induction of Iran as a full member of SCO has further complicated the chessboard of geopolitics of the region. In this backdrop, we'll be asking whether SCO can move beyond the geopolitical shifts and rivalries to speak in one voice about key issues that impinge on peace, stability, and prosperity in the region. Lastly, I wish to emphasize that this webinar is a future-oriented discussion, and we will be focusing on the next steps for strengthening SCO and India's role in the region. Here, I would request all speakers to include some suggestions in their remarks. Going forward, SCO's core agenda will be stability and cooperation, as the initials in the acronym suggest. Now, let me outline housekeeping rules to the webinar. Uh, at the webinar today, we have veteran diplomats and analysts who will try to answer some of your questions. If you have some specific questions, you can type in chat box on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, any of these platforms you're following this webinar on. You can also type in your questions, comments in the Facebook and YouTube link. We encourage you to tweet about the webinar. Please tag India at the rate of India Right, TGII. And we request journalists to write about this important discussion, especially as Prime Minister Modi heads to Samarkand next week for the summit. Now, let me get on with the main course. And let me start. Before we start the discussion, may I ask everyone, maybe we wait for the group photo. I think Manish is not here right now. So let me start this discussion by inviting Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar. Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar, as many of you would already know, is a veteran diplomat who served as the ambassador of India to Kazakhstan, Sweden, and Latvia, and has worked in diplomatic positions in many capitals, including Washington, D.C., Brussels, Moscow, Dhaka, and Bangkok. He negotiated for India in the Uruguay round of multilateral trade negotiations for India-EU, India-ASEAN, and India-Thailand Free Trade Agreement. He has worked as the head of National Foundation for Communal Harmony. Most important, Ambassador Sajanhar knows this region like the back of his hand. So let me invite Ambassador Sajanhar to kick off this discussion by highlighting India's core priorities at the SCO summit in Samarkand and how India can leverage this important organization to promote to accelerate economic integration in the region at a time when the global economic growth continues to be uneven. Over to you, Ambassador Sajanhar.
Well, thank you very much, Manish. Thank you for this very generous introduction, and also thank you for the opening remarks that you have made, because you have very well set out the stage in which this summit is taking place, the 22nd summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now, as you've put it very rightly, this is the first in-person summit that is taking place of the SCO over the last 3 years. The last summit, in-person summit, which Prime Minister Modi had also attended, the other leaders had also attended, was in June 2019 in Bishkek. And after that, in 2020 in Russia, it was a virtual summit. And last year in Dushanbe, it was a hybrid summit where some leaders came in person, but most of the leaders like Russia, China, India, they participated in it virtually. So this one is expected to be the first summit in which all the principal actors, not only the 8 members, but also Iran, which is going to be joining as the 9th member, that is also going to attend in person. So I think in addition to the discussions on SCO issues, on SCO matters, we will also have discussions on not only bilateral issues, but I think on global issues, the uncertainties that you have mentioned, whether it is the
Yeah. Yeah. Hello.
the other aspect is that this will be the first summit that will be taking place of Shaukat Mirziyoyev as the president of Uzbekistan. The last summit that took place was in 2016, and at that time he was not the president. So I'm sure it would be his intention to make it extremely successful and productive. President Shaukat Mirziyoyev has been very active in a large number of areas, particularly in the area of connectivity. So I think it would be the host's interest and intention that this should be a very successful summit. The third point is that India is taking over as the chair of the summit. So India would also like to see that there is what is it that can be done as far as the summit is concerned, because this will be the takeoff stage to the summit taking place in Delhi next year. That having been said, Manish, what we really need to look at in the SCO context is, one is the regional context, that is of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The second is in the context of bilateral relations of India with most of the partners, particularly as far as the Central Asian countries are concerned. I think we need to recognize this, that when India became an observer, for instance, in 2005. And after that, we expressed our interest in becoming a full member. That took a good 10 plus years, because it was only in 2017 that India became a member. One of the most important reasons was that since the independence of Central Asian countries, we had really not been able to reach out to them in a very proactive or effective manner. And we thought that our membership of SCO will definitely provide us with a platform in which we will be able to engage with these countries. And I think that has really happened. When you see that the engagement of Prime Minister Modi, not only in his bilateral visit in 2015 to all the five Central Asian countries, but his participation from 2015 onwards, where he participated in UFA SEO summit in July 2015, and after that, Tashkent, Astana, Qingdao, etc. In all these places, he has made it a point to meet all the Central Asian counterparts. So that, I think, really needs also to be kept in mind, that in addition to the regional context, the Prime Minister is definitely going to reach out to the four Central Asian leaders who are going to be there, and also likely that the leadership of the newly anointed president of Turkmenistan, Sardar Berdi Muhammadov, he is also going to be there, because Turkmenistan, although it's not a member, but it has always been a permanent invitee. In terms of our interests, I will keep it brief, and we can have further discussions on that. Definitely, Afghanistan and peace, security, stability in Afghanistan is going to be a very important element. We have seen the developments in Afghanistan that have taken place in recent times, whether it is the assassination of Ayman al-Zawahiri, or after that the terrorist attacks that have been taking place within Afghanistan, and the potential of their reaching out to Central Asia and so on and so forth. So, first, in terms of peace and security and stability in Afghanistan, and I feel that the UN Security Council resolution that India had piloted when it was chairing the UNSC in August 2021. I think that will really serve as the template as far as our own position on the Afghan issue is concerned. The second aspect would definitely be connectivity, because the fact that Pakistan does not permit us to have an access to Central Asian countries, or from there beyond that to Russia and to Europe. So I think focus on INSTC and focus on Chabahar. I think these are going to be also very important elements of our discussions, both bilaterally with Uzbekistan, because Uzbekistan has taken a very proactive position on the route from Uzbekistan, Termez to Mazar-e Sharif to Herat to the Afghan Iranian border. So that, I think, is definitely going to be an important issue. The third is on the issue of terrorism. I think the fact that not a single country in the world, and definitely not in the region also, has recognized Afghanistan's Taliban dispensation establishment, even though it is more than 13 months that they assumed power. So the concerns of the global community are the same as far as terrorism is concerned. So I think terrorism, radicalization, etc., are definitely going to be issues. Then, maybe lastly, what I could say also is, India during the COVID period, India has made a huge progress and huge strides in the area of digitization. We have seen how India has marched forward, has surged forward in this area. So, what India can do in terms of sharing our experience and our expertise in the area of health, also, we have done exceedingly well. So, these are positive elements that we can share. Then, lastly, in the area of startups, because India has really become the startup capital of the world. Next, what I would say is that after the Russia Ukraine conflict, it is my considered view that these countries, particularly the Central Asian countries, are really looking for options outside this region because they don't want to be totally dependent upon China, and they find that Russia is to a significant extent distracted from paying full attention to this region, which it otherwise, in terms of being the security provider, it could have done. So they are also looking for options outside the region, and I think India can definitely be one of the important players as far as this is concerned. So I think it is a win-win situation for SCO and India, for Central Asia and India, that we engage our partnership. Of course, when we take over as the chair of the this summit relationship for next year, there are a number of other areas. You know, when India was heading the heads of government summit meeting, we had taken huge initiatives in areas like traditional medicines, in areas of cultural cooperation. And I'm sure those and others will definitely be taken up by India to take our relationship forward. Let me stop here,
Right.
Manish, and I'll be guided by how you want to take the discussions
Yeah.
forward. Thank
Thanks
you.
so much, Ambassador Sajana, for that very big picture view. And the two of the important points you made about the region looking at India anew as an alternative. Reasons appetite for greater engagement with India. That's important. The second, of course, the win-win relationship between India and the region, and the third point, of course, about the Afghanistan, that SCO could play a vital role. On the bit about Afghanistan, let me bring in now Ambassador Pankaj Saran on that. Allow me to briefly introduce Ambassador Saran. Uh, he served as Deputy National Security Advisor of India and India's ambassador to Russia. He was Joint Secretary in the Prime Minister's office from 2007 to 2012. He was High Commissioner to Bangladesh in 2015 when the historic India Bangladesh land boundary agreement was ratified by the Parliament of India. And we are extremely fortunate to have him here because he brings in, diplomatic acumen. He brings in the security perspective, and I would like him to speak on, how India can leverage the SCO to promote its own narrative, its own approach to Afghanistan for stabilizing, especially in view of complications created by the Taliban takeover. uh, because in SCO also you have countries which have different priorities or different approaches. So some people say that what kind of cohesive approach can SCO take on Afghanistan? And related question to that is also counter-terror cooperation, because our main concern is the presence of terror networks in Afghanistan which are patronized by the establishment. Over to you, Ambassador Saran.
Well, thank you so much, Manish, for arranging and for hosting this very timely event and discussion as we enter the last phase of the summit next week. So it's a very timely initiative, and I'm very glad to be in the presence of so many senior diplomats and academicians and experts. So thank you for that. Well, with regard to the specific issue of Afghanistan, this will also be the first time the SCO will be meeting in physical form after the exit of the Americans in August 2021. So it's a totally new reality now that you actually have the Taliban in power in Afghanistan. And so a lot of the discussions and a lot of the diplomatic uh, maneuverings that took place in the early part of 2021 and 2020 are now appear a thing of the past. Because if you remember, before August 21, the basic scene for the diplomatic activity was largely Doha, although there were other capitals involved. But the SCO members themselves were not very directly involved in the critical negotiations because they basically involved the Americans and the Taliban. So now that the Taliban have been in power for 1 year and Afghanistan has lived through this period, I think all countries will have a better sense of whether their predictions and their prognosis for Afghanistan after 1 year is valid or needs to be readjusted. And because before August and when the Taliban took over, uh, you were basically making assessments. Today, one of the good aspects of the summit will be to take stock of what has actually happened on the ground in 1 year in Afghanistan under the Taliban rule. You remember last year in December or so, India hosted a very critical meeting of the National Security Advisors, in which all the SCO states were present, along with their NSAs. And again, that led to the Delhi Declaration and enunciation of some basic principles on Afghanistan. So, this dialogue among the SCO on Afghanistan is very helpful at one level because it helps us to understand each other's concerns. But at another level, a lot of the actual dealings and interactions with Afghanistan and the solutions to the problems Afghanistan faces will continue to be dominated between each of the SCO members and the Taliban regime in Kabul. And here we have to go with open eyes because different countries have different priorities. And we have to find out as India which are the partnerships we should push forward, which help us to meet the challenges posed to our own security in Afghanistan. So we have to make an assessment whether we can go beyond just simple platitudes to come out with some kind of more concrete policies. Because the contact group, for example, on Afghanistan, has dealt with the problems at a very generic level. So I would say that's the second challenge that we face. Thirdly, on the whole question of security and terrorism, uh, the record is mixed. People who have, it depends who you ask this question to. If you ask this question to, say, the Taliban or, the sections within the Taliban, or you ask this question to a Pashtun or a Hazara or a Tajik, or you ask this to, say, the government of Tajikistan, or for example, Kazakhstan, or China, for example, or Pakistan, you will get different replies. As far as we are concerned, I think this is an opportunity for us to be very frontal and open about where we find difficulties, and we must put our concerns clearly on the table, because this is the advantage of a multilateral platform. So, for example, I would like to see an open treatment of terrorist groups operating in Afghanistan which target India, such as the Lashkar-e-Toiba or the Jaish-e-Mohammed or other formations. We should express our concerns over ungoverned spaces in Afghanistan. I think we should also make an assessment, along with other partners in the SCO, about the stability of the current regime in Taliban and their track record and their behavior towards controlling activities of terrorist groups, which bother us, as well as groups like the Islamic State and the ISKP, which are more global in their nature. I think then we must also talk about the relationship and the contribution or otherwise which, for example, Pakistan is making towards Afghanistan, because we have to make an assessment whether that is a factor that is part of the solution or it remains a part of the problem in Afghanistan. And we must therefore come out clearly. Of course, from 2017 till now, it's almost 5 years, our engagement with the SCO at all levels has definitely grown. And this includes the RATS, the RAT structure, the anti-terrorist military exercises. So there was some initial confusion or lack of clarity in our own thinking. But I think over time, this has really now become much more clear. And so we are now everywhere. Our personnel are positioned in Tashkent, in the various SCO structures. So we are better placed today. And I think with Afghanistan today, if we treat it as also a transit country for Central Asia, this is again a new situation where the importance of the INSTC becomes, and Chabahar has become more significant after the Ukraine crisis. And so this is again a good opportunity for us to really push both these initiatives with the member countries. And now that Iran is also a member of the SCO, again, for both the INSTC as well as for Chabahar, it's a very good development because it will facilitate both these corridors. Because unless and until we do not have the requisite connectivity, it will be difficult to realize many of the ambitious plans and ideas that we have. But uh, we should also, in this context, as Master Sajanar was saying, the last years have shown how we have been able to contribute to the welfare of Central Asia during the COVID. Here, I think we must also refer to the wheat supplies we provided to Afghanistan, our limited engagement with the Taliban regime, and our continued focus on the question of the Taliban gaining internal legitimacy within their own country before they seek external legitimacy. I think that is really important. And unless and until we do not have a situation where the ruling establishment or the regime in Kabul can claim that it has the support of all sections of the Afghan society, it will be difficult for it to realize its objective of getting international recognition. So maybe I'll just stop here for the moment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Uh, Are you done with it?
Yes,
Hello.
thank you. I thought I'll just stop here.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Saran. There are many questions for that picture on what we can SCO can do on Afghanistan, and what role, how can India cooperate, leverage SCO for promoting an inclusive regime in Afghanistan. There are many questions for you. We'll come to that in the audience round. Uh, Now I invite Ambassador Skan Tayal, uh, again a veteran diplomat who knows the region very well, who has served in the region as India's ambassador in Uzbekistan, which is hosting the summit. Ambassador Tayal, by way of introduction, uh, served as ambassador in Uzbekistan and also to South Korea, the two very important countries in our extended neighborhood. And he has served in different capitals uh, across the world, including Moscow, Sofia, Warsaw, Geneva, and the rest. He has a very interesting background, which is a postgraduate degree in chemistry from IIT Kanpur. And he also served, not many know that he served during his tenure as passport Joint Secretary in charge of passport services, will revolutionize the delivery of this essential service to the people of India. Ambassador Dayal, my question to you is that talking about the economic side of SCO process, Uzbekistan, for example, the Uzbek presidency has identified or is focusing on promoting greater economic linkages in the region. Uh, and that's the positive part. Beyond geopolitics, what can SCO do in terms of development, in terms of economic uh, trade and investment, in terms of startup? There's a whole lot of possibility there. And also, I'd like you to address this question, which I asked earlier to Ambassador Sajanhar also about skepticism in India among some sections in the strategic community about the usefulness of SCO for a core strategic interest. Over to you, Ambassador Dayal.
Thank you, Manishji.
Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Manishji, for that introduction, and thanks to you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. We can hear. There is some issue.
All right. Thanks to you and Indian Rights Network for giving me this opportunity to share some thoughts on SCO, and thanks also to Ambassador Sajanhar and for this for setting out what are the issues really in SCO where India can be active, can be a player, and to Ambassador Pankaj Saran on focusing on Afghanistan and security issues. I would like to start with mentioning one fact that Shanghai Cooperation Organization is different from many other multilateral organizations where India is a member. It is so because really Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a political, military and economic organization, not just political and economic. It was founded on an agreement on strengthening confidence in the military field in border areas in 1996, where China and Russia, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan and Tajikistan came together. Then the declaration of creation of Shanghai Cooperation Organization in 2001, that also focuses on peace, security and stability as the primary objective. And of course, regional economic and social cooperation is also mentioned. And again, in the SCO Charter, the first three goals include strengthening mutual trust, friendship and good neighborliness, cooperation in maintenance and strengthening of peace, security and stability in the region, and of course, jointly counteract terrorism, separatism and extremism in all their manifestations, which all our listeners would note is a very typically Chinese formulation. So perhaps on the security side, the countries really did not face any external aggression, being Russia from one side and China from the other side, and they being the patrons really of SCO in a manner of speaking. So the focus was on security side on terrorism. And that's how RATS came up. The SCO headquarters are in Beijing, and the only other functioning organization is Regional Anti-Terrorist Structure based in Tashkent, and it has been having a regular organization structure. How effective it has been, that Ambassador Pankaj Saran would be in a position to share, because he was in National Security Council Secretariat, and I believe our National Security Council Secretariat really is the focal point in India for interacting with RATS. And we also see that there have been exercises where in Orenburg, and which was a military exercise under no other organization where we are part of, there are military exercises, and there will be anti-terrorist exercises in Manesar. I think they are being held in October this year. So our focus should continue to be on anti-terrorism, as the Pankaj Saran said, and try to make SCO overall as well as RATS more effective in dealing with terrorism. And now that Afghanistan is back in the hands of Taliban, there have been instances of some firing from Afghanistan side into Uzbekistan. There have been some instances. There are all kinds of organizations, Islamic movement of Uzbekistan, etc., which still have sanctuary in Afghanistan. And the greatest threat, common threat, which is faced by the 5 Central Asian countries, by China in Xinjiang, by Russia in some parts, by India, is really religious fundamentalism, because that feeds into terrorism, that feeds the mindset and activities and financing which lead to acts of terrorism. And there, uh, President Mirziyoyev has taken some very effective steps in Uzbekistan, and he has made some very major speeches, and that yes, religion is sacred, but it is not what is being projected by some of the preachers. And he has made the society, the preachers, the mohalla, the everybody responsible for ensuring that no youth goes in a misguided direction, in a wrong direction. I think that can be a template for the other countries to safeguard their societies against religious fundamentalism. So if we talk about the regional approach or some kind of lessons which can be learned, or experiences which can be shared within the framework of SCO, our focus on one point would be terrorism, second, religious fundamentalism. Now, the other thing about Shanghai Cooperation Organization is that we must be mindful that the focus area of operation of Shanghai Cooperation Organization is Central Asia. In the 20th anniversary declaration of SCO in Bishkek, in Dushanbe, the 17th September 2021, it was very clearly said that Central Asia is the core of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And we must therefore fully understand that as far as the activities, operations are concerned, the focus will be on Central Asia, and India, we have to accept, is geographically peripheral, and it can connect with Central Asia, help the Central Asian countries in their own development, in their own regional growth, but there are limitations. Now, where can there be a regional approach as far as the economic issues are concerned? Now, the SCO summit is being held in Tashkent, and again, President Shavkat Mirziyoyev has been very proactive in promoting physical connectivity between Central Asia and South Asia. We all recall a very important summit meeting was hosted by President Shavkat Mirziyoyev in July of last year, just before August, where Afghanistan changed. In fact, in that conference, President Ashraf Ghani had come. And there was a lot of talk about a route being opened from Central Asia through Afghanistan towards Pakistan, and of course, Chabahar and north-south transport corridor was also mentioned. In his presidential speech, President Mirziyoyev has very in detail mentioned the ancient links, physical links, trade links of Central Asia with India, the ancient northern route which has been mentioned in our ancient text. And therefore, in any regional approach, what our endeavor should be that whenever that connectivity issue comes, the Central Asian republics should prevail upon whatever is the regime in Afghanistan and whatever is the regime in Pakistan, that this connectivity between Central Asia and South Asia does not end at the border of Pakistan and India, and this connectivity is in towards India also. Because we can, yes, Chabahar will be important, but if there is this land connectivity between India and Central Asia, that would be a game changer as far as our uh, interests are concerned. And Manishji, we have to be mindful of the fact that Afghanistan seems to be inclined to join the BRI, and all the Central Asian countries are participants of BRI. And it is quite possible that some of the roads under CPEC may move towards Afghanistan also, and how we safeguard our interests, how we safeguard our sovereignty and territorial integrity, and that other Central Asian republics are also mindful of that this is a violation of the CPEC is a violation of India's sovereignty. That will remain a concern for us, both in physical terms when these roads are built, constructed, and also in whatever documents come out of the Tashkent summit. In the previous summit, there was a reference to BRI, but that all those who are participants in BRI, they supported that initiative. And since India is not a participant, India did not support. But we have to be very careful. Now, on as you asked about economic linkages, again, because of the physical connectivity issues that has been the problems in 1992 once these countries became independent for the last 30 years. There has not been any movement. There is a talk of digital highway. Brother Janhar also mentioned about that. There are immense possibilities, but that may perhaps is better done bilaterally between India and Uzbekistan, India and Kazakhstan, India, Tajikistan. And I wonder what could be the role of SCO in that, whether it is possible for SCO to have some kind of interconnectivity among the Central Asians, the fiber optical network. If that happens, that will be very useful for India to share its its expertise in medicine, in teaching, in other services with our Central Asian friends, and that could be an area where if the capacities, the local capacities of Central Asian republics in digital connectivity, the high-speed internet, and the fiber. And we have fiber in every city of almost every village in India now, fiber optical network. If some similar project can be taken up in Central Asian republics, that could give us a huge access to all the Central Asian republics, starting with these services which they are hungry for, which they really want. Our friends in Central Asia, they come to India for medical treatment, for education, and this could be also imparted to these means. So I think I will stop here, and then
Right.
take it forward.
Right. Thank you, Ambassador Dayal, for your very insightful observations on a range of issues. especially about connectivity and economic integration and the role of the SCO. There are several questions from the audience. We will come back to that when we come to the question answer round. Now I invite Dr. Leela Delovarova, who is joining us from Kazakhstan. She's the only woman panelist here, so we are really grateful that you could make it. Dr. Leela is a faculty member of International Relations Department of Al Farabi, Kazakh National University. Since September 2017, she's been the director of the Academic Regional Resource Center of Information about the United Nations at Farabi, Kazakhstan University, and actively cooperates with UN agencies, NGOs, and national institutions and research centers. Welcome to this webinar, Dr. Leela. I invite you to speak on the Central Asian perspective. We're all talking, most of our speakers from India's perspective, but what do you make out of, the appetite in Central Asia, the desire by Central Asian countries to play a bigger role, for India to play a bigger role in the region? What are expectations of Central Asian countries for the SCO summit? Please note you have only 8 minutes to make your presentation. And we have several questions, so all the speakers will have more to speak. Over to you, Dr. Lee.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manish Chand. Good afternoon, Your Excellencies, and thank you very much. My special thanks to Dr. Shrikant Kandapalli also for this opportunity. Yes. So how Central Asia looks at the role of the India in the region. India's cooperation with the Central Asia countries is important in terms of geocultural, geoeconomics, and geostrategic perspectives. Today, India is actively represented on the regional and global platforms and has a huge potential. Both. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Both India and Central Asia interested parties in ensuring the stability in the region and along the perimeter. And the new geopolitical role of India in Central Asia is defined by the security in the region, the Afghanistan security situation, the role of Russia in Central Asia, which has changed due to the situation in Ukraine. The next point is the rise of China in Central Asia, formation of a new global security system and geopolitical alignment system. And one more point is that there is no any established security architecture in Central Asia, and India could be a huge contributor on this point. Let me also point several things on regarding Kazakhstan and Central Asia, which are the main fields to cooperate. There are the issues of regional security, multilateral and bilateral cooperation on stability in Central Asia and neighboring countries, nuclear security issue, coordination on joint efforts to combat terrorism and extremism, new challenges and threats in cybersecurity, and through the development of trade and economic cooperation, investment, and establishment of transit and transport links and corridors, which were also mentioned by previous speakers. This also is very important. So for Kazakhstan and India, cooperation within the SCO and wider, it is combating traditional and new threats and challenges, implementing economic policy, ensuring energy security, resolving the situation on the perimeter, and exactly, I mean, again, Afghanistan. And the Shanghai spirit creates favorable conditions for combating and combining the goals and values, productive establishment and development of inter-civilization dialogue, establishing a culture of communication, focus on obtaining a joint and mutually beneficial result. And it is also allowing to take a kind balance between all member states within the organization. Coming to the point of expectation of Central Asia countries from the summit in Samarkand, I would point out that Uzbekistan conceptual approach basis on priorities like trade, industrial and technological cooperation, openness on transport and economic integration, innovation, digital transformation, and green economy. It offers the SCO countries a rethinking of values of multilateral cooperation in the period of this difficult geopolitical and economic turbulence at the global level, which also influence in a regional and interregional level. Therefore, it is expected that there will be a number of breakthroughs, initiatives, and proposals during the summit in Samarkand. And growing interest in the potential of the SCO and external level considered to be main countries of Central Asia. In fact, the SCO was created to develop a new major cooperation in this field. And it is contribution to the stability, security, and establishment of multilateral cooperation. And here the role of India is very important. And as one of the key outcome document of the summit is seem to be Samarkand Declaration, which reflects the common approaches of the organization and countries which are members, solving the problem of collective security and problems with the definition of priorities for the development of organization. And coming again to the potential of the India and the role of the India, which is really important, I would mention Mr. Modi's proposals given at the earlier summit, which covers the key areas of the interaction which are important for Central Asia countries and whole NCO members. And it was like given abbreviation, the health. It's cooperation in the fields of healthcare, economic cooperation, alternative energy sources, literature and culture, a society free from terrorism, and humanitarian cooperation. So the development of the transit and transport potential of the countries in Central Asia and the promotion of joint initiative to create international transport corridor is the most important part of the cooperation, which could be also integrative within the regional security, taking into account the role of Afghanistan and situation in Ukraine. And India is very strong and interested in information technology and software. It will give the organization a new potential in terms of digitalization. And one more initiative which could be also realized is working on irregular migration within the organization, within Central Asia and wider over the region. And India seriously enlarge the potential of organization because due to the India's participation to SCO, now this organization also has a status of interregional organization, which also gives new impulses and potential to realize main initiatives. Thank you very much.
Of what India can do with the SCO, other countries in the region. There are several questions, so we'll come back to you again. Now I invite Professor Srikanth Kondapalli. Welcome, Dr. Kondapalli, to the show, Srikanth. So let me introduce Dr. Kondapalli. He is Dean School of International Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University. He has been a professor of Chinese studies at JNU for many, many years. He's also an honorary fellow at Institute of Chinese Studies, Delhi, and research associate at Center for Chinese Studies, University of Stellenbosch, South Africa. He's authored many books on China, India-China relations, and he's just the right person to talk about the China factor in the SCO. Srikant, we are having this webinar, and the summit is also happening at a time when there are some positive signs of, possible rapprochement between India and China. Maybe that's too strong a word, but the withdrawal of Chinese troops from an important area, Gogra Hot Spring, just ahead of the summit, has kindled speculation about a possible meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Chinese President. But my question is a larger one, which is about how does India-China relations impact the efficacy of the SCO as a grouping and what we are trying to do in Central Asia. Over to you, Srikant.
Thank you very much, Manish, and let me also thank the fellow panelists for elaborating on several aspects which are quite relevant and uh, quite interesting issues related to the upcoming SEO meeting. And let me thank the Rights for inviting me for this discussion. Now, on the first aspect on how does that impact on India-China relations, I think as India had participated in the SEO summit meetings, last few meetings virtually and the current one in person going to happen in Uzbekistan. So India had taken a decision which is bifurcating from the multilateral and the bilateral. Bilateral, as Dr. Jaishankar mentioned, unless until peace and tranquility prevails on the border, we will not have much improvement in the bilateral relations. He had repeatedly mentioned this, and this is in the background of 20 Indian soldiers being killed by China on June 15 night 2020 and subsequently. And of course, yesterday, the foreign ministries of China and India have declared that after the 16 Corps Commander level meeting, the decision has been taken to disengage troops in the hot springs. And so this is a welcome step in terms of the meeting of the two leaders uh, in the next few days, Prime Minister Modi as well as President Xi Jinping. So while that is a positive development, we should not read too much into the impact of this bilateral on the multilateral, because as you know, there are 6 more areas, petrol points, where China has not yet been able to disengage and de-escalate in the India-China border areas. So there is something still hanging in the bilateral relations, although it had not impacted on the way India had interacted at the multilateral, such as in the SEO, BRICS, East Asian Summit, United Nations, G20, or other multilateral fora where India and China have been interacting. So on this question of whether the hot springs issue that was resolved yesterday will have an impact, number one, all friction points have not yet been able to disengage and de-escalate. So we still have 5 to 6 more areas where China has to disengage. And so the impact on the bilateral is said to be limited in nature on this, of this incident on hot springs yesterday. On the multilateral, India had taken a fine balance, as is reflected in India hosting the foreign ministerial meeting of the SEO and also the BRICS recently, and hosting this year, late this year, the G20 process, in which China and India are part of the equation. So, but there is also another dimension here. SEO is more multipolar than multilateral. because of the ideological stance that SCO had undertaken since the beginning in 1996 as Shanghai 5, and then since 2001 as SCO. And India had become the observer in 2005 and then a full-fledged member in 2017. So the multipolarity aspect is important here because Dr. Jaishankar mentioned that multipolarity at the global level and multipolarity at Asia level is what India stands for, and that is where probably some friction with China will be factored in terms of uh, the multilateral, multipolar interactions with China in the SEO format. So these two things come to my mind quickly on the India-China connection. Of course, China has many of the issues that China discusses in the SEO are also closer to the Indian perspective, such as counterterrorism, energy, infrastructure development, the bilateral economic and trade investments. Although since 2000, we have seen 2000 6, 7, and more specifically from 2015, the multilateral economic aspect has been accepted in the overall SEO format. First, it was the Energy Club, and then later on, at the multilateral economic cooperation. For example, Eurasian Economic Union has tied with the BRI projects, Belt and Road Initiative projects. So there is that multilateral economic interaction happening also in the SEO. However, while India-China agendas are the same, such as terrorism, counterterrorism, drug control, energy cooperation, um, uh, transportation, and communications, digital, as some speakers have mentioned, so on and so forth. The approach is slightly different between India and China. While the issues are the same, approach are slightly different. For example, on counterterrorism, the Chinese, while they say they oppose all forms of terrorism, but in the 1267 Committee of the United Nations, which is known as the ISIL and Al Qaeda Committee, China has been for the past 11, 12 years not been able to cooperate with the 1267 committee when evidence was provided to them on several terrorists based in Pakistan. China had been able to escape this by suggesting to some technical clauses. And only in 2019 there was the case on Masood Azhar resolved. And however, last month in August, there was a case on Mr. Makki, but that has not been. Again, China had put a technical hold on this issue. So since 2009 onwards, Masood Azhar, Zakirul Rahman, now Makki, and Azhar's brother, all these were implicated by the 1267 committee, but China found some excuses on these. One wonders whether China supports terrorism while it is speaking about three evils and others. So, from that format, the Indian approach and the Chinese approach are slightly different, although the themes are the same on terrorism. Likewise, on drug control or on energy. For instance, both China and India this year have imported a lot of oil and gas from Russia, partly because this is quite cheaper compared to the global prices. Historically, the global prices have been around 60 to 70 dollars per barrel, but increased to $140 per barrel during the global financial crisis. And currently, with the Ukrainian war and the Nord Stream 2 being shut down, the oil and gas prices have been going up to over $100 per barrel, resulting in the China-India energy bills going up. And so there is the commonality here, but again, there is a difference here in this case because the Indian oil refineries, etc., are also exporting to many European countries, although they import from Russia. And most of these are, of course, private companies run by the Reliance company or others. So the approach is different here. And also on the expansion of the membership, on the SCO development strategy 2025. On that issue as well, there is the different approach that China and India follows. India's approach is more closer to the Central Asian republics on environmental issues. For example, the former Kazakh president Nazarbayev mentioned about the reducing crude oil, but exporting value-added products of the energy. And India is also, in a way, looking at the environmental issues and others. So it is more closer to the Central Asian republics. And when the Central Asian republics suggested to region first and not one country dominating the Central Asian space, I think India also conquers on that idea as the even though it doesn't have direct transportation links. So from the point of view of the North-South Transport Corridor, International North-South Transport Corridor, India has been supporting this initiative. And there are various, as other speakers also mentioned, the digital highway and others are being discussed. Finally, I wanted to add that uh, in this summit or in future, the SCO need to take into consideration the civil society dialogues, interactions between the SCO states. And since India has no hidden agenda in the Central Asian republics or elsewhere, it doesn't have the territorial conquest or sovereignty related aspects here. Um, or no hidden agenda, and in fact has been helpful in vaccine distribution during this COVID-19 disaster that affected the entire SCO region. SCO region is also one of the largest in terms of the number of victims, number of those people killed. I think the third largest across the globe. So although it has 25% global oil reserves, 50% gas reserves, 35% of coal reserves, and half of uranium, global uranium. But it is also the third largest in terms of COVID related problems. And India had done some vaccine distribution here. And so there is, and now also offering startups, innovation, and other initiatives. From this point of view, I think the future related, should consider the civil society interactions, especially between media, educational institutions, think tanks, and other fora that need to be expanded further, so that we provide an alternative viewpoint coming from the civil society in the SEO states. So here I stop. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks, Srikanth, for that very detailed and very comprehensive take on China and India-China relations, the interplay, and how that will play out in the SEO context. Uh, Now, I would invite Ambassador Manish Prabhat, who's finally found time to be with us. But before we do that, our technician will take a group photo. So please look your best and look into the computer screen. Okay, I think we are probably done with it. Okay, now I invite Ambassador Manish Prabhat, who is in the very place, is Ambassador of India to Uzbekistan. He's right there in Tashkent, seeing things up front, engaged in negotiations, and having a blow by blow account of what's happening. He's been the ambassador of India to Uzbekistan for the last 2 years. Before this, he headed the Eurasia division in the Ministry of External Affairs. Without much ado, I want to invite Ambassador Prabhat to essentially give us a picture from Tashkent about what is the expectation from India here, from Uzbekistan and the larger Central Asia region in terms of the summit in Samarkand. Over to you, Manish.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Manish, for inviting me to this forum. I have a good opportunity to speak to the audience through this platform. I greet my fellow panelists and my very esteemed ambassadors, seniors, Ambassador Tayal, who is here, Ambassador Sajanhar, Ambassador Sharan. All respected seniors have already spoken about Central Asia. They are experts on the subject. Let me correct you, Mr. Manish, that I'm not involved in negotiations in SCO here, and you wanted to give me a blow-by-blow account. Unfortunately, of course, I can't do that because I'm not there. This is a task which is, for the SCO division of the ministry. I look after bilateral, issues between India and Uzbekistan, and I would be happy to give some account of, the perspective from Tashkent. How India is placed here, what we are looking at. And also, I think that largely what is happening in Central Asia, from the from Uzbek perspective also, I think it gives a decently, comprehensive picture of the region, and I think that that is also the effort when India, attempts to have India Central Asia Summit or India Central Asia Dialogue, because there is a unified policy which we want to make with our Central Asian partners of what should be the future of cooperation between India and Central Asia. I would like to inform you that, today itself, in Uzbekistan, the Uzbek Foreign Ministry launched a book or a guide on, how to do business with Uzbekistan or how to invest and why to invest in Uzbekistan. And of course, this was a task which was, being done, in collaboration with UNDP. And UNDP informed that yesterday only they have published, world report on Human Development Index, for 2021-22. And, 90% of the countries in the world have fallen in the Human Development Index and are back to 2016 level on average, which is, of course, of concern because of COVID. There is this huge loss. But Uzbekistan is among 10% of countries who have recorded positive growth in HDI. And with the 5.5% of GDP growth in Uzbekistan, even during the COVID years, it is good to see that there is economic progress in Uzbekistan, and there's all efforts in Uzbekistan to do more business with outside world, open its business, to engage outside, attract foreign direct investment. The number of enterprises registered, has been increasing in this country, and that is where I think that in Uzbekistan, or largely in Central Asia, which was seen as, a landlocked region, which has plenty of, natural resources, minerals, etc., was the site of great game in earlier centuries. Big power politics has never gone away. But of course, Central Asia is trying to now speak in one voice. There's greater emphasis on economic integration in Central Asia. And we see that there is the informal consultative process of all Central Asian presidents who periodically meet. The last one, it was in Kyrgyzstan, in Cholpon Ata, just a few months back. And so there is a greater realization that the leaders of Central Asia would meet together informally, formally. They would discuss things and try to sort out issues. That there have been problems of boundary demarcation. There have been problems of control over water resources. There have been violent incidents in the past, but all of that is now on decrease, and there is greater integration among Central Asian countries and willingness to address these issues together, which is also resulting in economic progress in Central Asia. There is a recent report that in the next 10 years, it is estimated that Central Asia or Central Asia region and these 5 countries would attract foreign direct investment of $170 billion. Now, of course, these are huge figures, and as as India, we need to look at these kinds of opportunities. That how do we engage with these kinds of opportunities which are arising in Central Asia, and the focus of our diplomacy should be on economic engagements apart from political engagements, which are of course going on. And in any case, India has goodwill in Central Asia. All the 5 Central Asian countries want to engage with India, and the success of the India Central Asia dialogue at the level of foreign ministers going on to become the or have taken the form of India Central Asia Summit also, which happened for the first time in January this year, shows that there is willingness in Central Asia to engage with India on all the issues. As you know that we have announced a $1 billion line of credit, a concessional line of credit for all the 5 Central Asian countries in the framework of India Central Asia Summit, and we have also announced a $1 billion concessional line of credit for Uzbekistan, under which some projects have been identified, and we are in the technical stage of preparation of detailed project reports, etc. Apart from that, there is a target which has been set by the leadership of both countries, India and Uzbekistan, to bring our trade to the level of $1 billion. Also diversify our the basket of commodities in which we export and import. India is of course a strong player in export of pharmaceuticals in the CIS, but of course there are many other commodities we would like to look at. And similarly, Central Asia and Uzbekistan, they can supply commodities like there is copper, minerals like copper, sulfur, and many other things for which both countries need to work together to bring that level of economic engagement up. Of course, there is this question of what to do about the connectivity question between India and Central Asia. Of course, there are many kinds of opportunities emerging in Central Asia. We need to look at the connectivity attempts to gain connectivity with the outside world. Recently, there was this announcement by Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and China in the framework of their C5 plus China dialogue that they would work on the China, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan railways. Of course, Uzbekistan is engaged with Afghanistan and Pakistan for the Trans-Afghan corridor, and Uzbekistan has also strongly supported India's efforts to promote Chabahar port as the point of connectivity between India and Central Asia. There are these kinds of routes which shows that all the Central Asian countries realize that they need to connect outside with the outside world with multiple options. Only then their economic diplomacy would succeed. They would be able to do export and import more. So we need to look at the options we are promoting. Of course, Chabahar port remains important. We hope that after 2 rounds of trilateral dialogue among India, Iran, and Uzbekistan, we would have the next round of the dialogue soon and take it forward. We would also like to see that Uzbekistan joins the international north-south transport corridor connectivity, and multiplies the options for export and import on this route. Especially after the recent geopolitical situation in Europe and between Russia and Europe, these routes also have gained prominence, and we need to work on that. Similarly, there are other issues on which India seeks closer cooperation with Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan has a very strong program of green energy and working together for preventing climate change. Recently, a lot of solar projects have gained prominence in Uzbekistan. Arab countries, the Gulf countries, have become partners in these. India has invited Uzbekistan to become a partner in join the International Solar Alliance, the Coalition on Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, and these kinds of projects. So we are trying to diversify our partnership in the field of trade, investment, economy, and green energy, renewables, which are all new areas of our cooperation. This is not to diminish the areas of political cooperation, defense cooperation, cultural, humanitarian, which of course are growing. I would like to make this point that in Central Asia, in the framework of Shanghai Cooperation Organization also, this realization is there, and India is a strong votary of this principle that Central Asia should be central to SCO, and whatever happens in SCO, you need to take into account the interests of Central Asia. And when we are thinking of interests of Central Asia, we need to also emphasize on economic partnership with Central Asia. India is on the right track, and I would say that since many other countries also have economic interests in Central Asia, we should not be left behind. And India and the private sector, Indian companies should make attempts to come to emerging markets like Uzbekistan. The growth has been good over last 5 years also, if we look at the data, and try to engage them in different sectors. I think that would be mutually beneficial, and the emphasis on economic cooperation should be given its due. Here, I would stop. Thank you, Mr. Manish.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
All right. Yes. So, that's a very good note to end on. As Manish has just said, Central Asia is central to Central Asia, of course, and the SCO and the region. And it's in our interest. It's a win-win partnership, which needs to be taken to the next stage. So this is a good note to have the first round of, to end the first round of this webinar on. And now we have several questions, but in the interest of time, I will just stick to another 15 minutes or so. And I'll take some of the questions. And I urge all the speakers to be very precise while responding to them so that we can have more questions. The first question is addressed to Mr. Pankaj Saran. This is asked by Mr. Bhargav Mitra, Joint Secretary, Cabinet Secretariat, former Joint Secretary. He says, how much traction does SCO as an organization has with the ruling regime in Afghanistan? Will the member states work in tandem on this count or deal with Afghanistan in individual capacity? Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, Bhargav. Nice to see you and hear from you. I think both tracks will be followed. You will have a formal SCO platform to interact with Afghanistan. But because the Taliban are now in power and they generate very strong reactions among each of the countries, and these are very early days for the Taliban, my assessment is that the bilateral track of individual countries dealing with the Taliban will be more pronounced at this stage. I mean, I can imagine the Chinese talking to the Taliban on their issues, the Tajiks, the Russians, the Pakistanis, the Iranians. So I think we will see more of the bilateral track in operation rather than the SCO collective effort, which will continue, but that might be more of a formality.
Right. The other question is from, again, related to Afghanistan. Ambassador Saran, you could answer this. It says that given that the government of Afghanistan is not formally recognized, should the Taliban be denied access to the SCO summit as an observer? And from what I hear, probably a delegation of Taliban would be present at the Samarkand summit. What do you make out of it? Should it be denied access to the SCO summit?
No, I think, they have already participated in some of the SCO meetings in the past, including perhaps in Uzbekistan. So till as long as the country, Afghanistan, is an observer, that's the only status they can have. So until and unless there is recognition by the United Nations and a seat is given in the United Nations to the Taliban, they will continue to have the status where I suppose they can attend, but they will not be a participant. I don't know whether they will be given, for example, a chance to speak as an observer representative of Afghanistan.
Right. There's a question for Ambassador Tayal by Salib Samad. It says that he asked, in the wake of the Russian invasion of Ukraine impacting global food security, energy crisis, and increasing debt issues, How will the north-south gap be addressed in the Samarkand summit? I think the larger point is that what can SCO do about addressing issues such as global energy security, food security, and such? Briefly, over to you, Ambassador.
SCO as an organization, perhaps not so much, but individual member countries certainly have a role. Now, if Europe reduces its consumption and purchase of Russian oil and gas, then where will that oil and gas go? Now, China, of course, is right there, and there has been just 2 3 days back it was announced there has been a new agreement between Gazprom and CNPC. But even TAPI is there. TAPI, the Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline has been on the drawing boards for 2 decades, and at one point even Uzbek gas was supposed to be injected into that. Now, we have to be mindful of the fact that more and more countries are going to deal with the regime in Afghanistan, whether they officially recognize it or not. So, is there some scope for this TAPI kind of a pipeline again getting revived, with even Russian gas being pumped into it? And this is a whole new area where the countries of the south, rest of the world, can benefit by tapping into the Russian gas and oil, which may become available in the world market.
Right. Uh, Srikant, there's a question for you from Ramanand Sengupta, who says that do bilateral issues such as India, China, Russia, China uh, affect the credibility and effectiveness of the SCO as an organization? The troubled relations or the interplay of bilateral relations, how does that affect SCO? Very briefly.
Well, thank you very much. I think from a theory perspective, as Robert Keohane, Joseph Nye, and others mentioned, the multilateral institutions are only looking at the commonalities between them, and bilateral issues do not crop up in the multilateral institutions. And of course, this is based on diplomatic reciprocity. This is based on not treating each other as a threat, and CBM's approach, and common security, and so on and so forth. Now, of course, we know that there are differences bilaterally within Central Asia, within Russia, China, within China, India, within Iran, and others as well. So there are issues, but none of these generally come up in the multilateral institutions, because that's the format multilateral institutions observe. Having said that, the Prime Minister Modi did express concerns on the CPEC China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, indirectly by mentioning about sovereignty issues should not be neglected when connectivity issues are being pursued. In the Qingdao meeting of the SCO, he had mentioned in the plenary session. Likewise, there are other contentious issues which can come up, and sometimes it does affect the image of the multilateral institution. So that is also the sensitivity that is in the background of the multilateral interactions. But these also provide the meeting. For instance, President Xi Jinping had not traveled abroad so far since the COVID-19 affected, since late 2019. He went to Hong Kong, and he didn't stay overnight as well. He went in the morning and got back. Hong Kong, being part of China now, can be said as not abroad. So he had not gone abroad so far, and that indicates this is a good opportunity to put across some views and concerns of India and, of course, the other countries. So I think there is a chance factor here of resolving some bilateral issues in the bylanes, not directly in the multilateral format.
Right. There is a question for Dr. Leela where Adi Narayana Subramaniam asked, what about the role of youth in a forum like SCO? How can we connect greater youth connect? Very briefly, over to
Yeah,
you.
this is very important question. Thank you very much for this question. I think you know that within the SCO, this is a virtual university of SCO, where the participants of the organizations could exchange the youth, and youth could study at MA programs which respond the key agenda of the organization. Another option is different events which are organized on scientific and social events within the organization. And I hope that the future development of organization cover more initiatives and more youth will be involved. This is very briefly what can I respond on this question.
All right. There's a question from Claude Leblanc from France. He's a French journalist, and he asked, can the SCO be considered as a model for a future global organization? It seems that India has a key role in this because it's close to the West, but also to Russia, and shares some principles with China. What's your view? Ambassador Saran, would you like to address this? That can the SCO be considered as a model organization?
Well, I don't think any organization can be considered a model organization. I mean, I don't know whether you would consider the United Nations to be a model organization. It's an imperfect organization for sure. I mean, and there is a certain geographical logic to having something like the SCO, and the Eurasian landmass is a reality, and Russia and China are the dominant players. But to call it a model organization might be a bit of an overstatement. I think we just have to make the best of the existing realities of differential power structures, different political systems, different interests, different ethnicities, which are now becoming coming more to the fore as time passes following the 1991 events. So maybe I'll just leave it at that.
Right. Last couple of questions. This is from Meena Singh Roy. Ambassador Dayal, you may like to address this. How effective do you think SCO has been in dealing with new security challenges in the region? Over to you, sir.
In the new security challenges, if one looks at one emanates from Afghanistan, then there is cyber security issues, religious fundamentalist issues, and terrorism has always been there. So, as I said, whether RATS, the regional anti-terrorist structure in Tashkent, has been effective, it has been functioning for more than 2 decades. And we have been participating lately in that. We have a member, I think somebody stationed also there. That our National Security Council would be able to say whether they have been effective or not. On Afghanistan, there was a contact group, but I think its effectiveness has been very marginal. I wonder whether, as far as the recognition of Taliban government is concerned, Uzbekistan has been very, very proactive. They have been dealing with them at almost official level, very regular meetings, selling of electricity, buying, etc. So without formal recognition, everything is going on. So is there some element of coordination that there should not be formal recognition by any member of the SCO? Till there is some kind of a consensus. I think if there is, it is a very good thing, and it is a very effective contribution in trying to mitigate the security challenges coming out of Taliban-dominated Afghanistan. Thank you.
Right. And there is one question for Ambassador Manish Prabhat, which is this from Shweta Agarwal India Rights Network, that most probably Prime Minister Modi will have a bilateral meeting with Uzbek president, And India-Uzbek relations are on a higher trajectory. What can one expect from this meeting?
The meetings are still being worked out. Of course, we are preparing for the program. But in any case, it is well known that we would like to expand our strategic partnership, its depth. As I said that, there is this challenging issue of doing more in trade. Both countries want it. There are issues of connectivity. So I think that the key questions would be that, how to bring up, our trade, identify new things for trade, and work on connectivity, which is Chabahar and INSTC. From Indian point of view, this would be important. Of course, there could be whole host of other issues also, but I think let's focus on more economic issues here.
All right. So thank you so much. We have come to the end of this very engaging, stimulating webinar panel discussion. And I'm really amazed by the very enthusiastic response from the audience from all over. People from different countries joined who probably have no connection with the apparent involvement in the region. They turned out in large numbers, and I got several more questions to ask. But I guess we have to end. We have been at it for almost 100 minutes now. So somewhere we got to end, and we got to wait for the Samarkand summit to see what outcomes, what blueprint it comes out with for ramping up cooperation across the spectrum. At the end, essentially, somebody asked about SCO being a model future organization, model or not. I believe each of these multilateral regional forum is important in this conflicted world, because if nothing, it provides an opportunity to engage across the spectrum, leaders, ministers, civil society. So we got to be at it despite skepticism. And my special thanks to all the very distinguished speakers who found time to be with us. Ambassador Manish Prabhat, who was busy with several meetings but found to join us toward the end. Ambassador Pankaj Saran, Ambassador Skantayal, Professor Sajanar, who is not here, who had to go for some other engagements, Professor Srikant Pondapalli, Leela de la Budeva, all of you, and of course our very fabulous audience. A lot of them stuck right till the end. So we end this discussion. We'll be publishing the remarks by speakers and the proceedings in the next edition of our magazine, and we will share it with all of you. Thanks so much once again. We look forward to having you again on the panel. Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, yeah.